Good morning. Welcome to Unacademy IAS. Welcome to another session of the Hindu News Analysis dated 4th March 2025. This is the list of 11 articles that I've taken from the daily edition of Hindu newspaper today. We'll have a discussion taking into consideration all the important points that are needed for you to score very high number of marks from the Indian economy plus let's say the polity plus S&T, etc. This discussion will be very comprehensive, and if you like this initiative, do not forget to hit the like button, and if you're yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it now. Before I start the discussion, if you are an aspirant aiming to crack the Civil Services Examination 2026 or 2027, there is an offer where subscribing for a 15-month course, you'll be able to get 60% off, and the prices are starting from 22,999. Once you avail this particular program, you'll be able to get access to the live as well as the recorded sessions of Hindi, English as well as bilingual classes. You will get access to the prelims as well as the mains test series. You will get access to the course material, etc. Those who are interested, do check out by clicking on the link provided in the description below. Now, before I go forward and start the discussion, those who are writing the upcoming prelims 2025, here is a very important news for you. I get mails on day-to-day basis asking me, sir, the static portion of Indian economy is so vast. How do I cover this particular static portion? Which concept is important, which topic is important, etc., etc. To address all of your concerns and to have a detailed discussion of all the key concepts that you will need to crack and score very good number of marks from Indian economy in the prelims 2025, we will be having a marathon session on Saturday, and this particular session will start at 2 p.m. on Saturday. So if you're yet to subscribe the YouTube channel, kindly do it. Hit the bell icon so that once the session goes live, you'll be able to join the session, and this will be live. Any doubts you have, you'll be able to get them cleared. Now, let me start the discussion. The first important article, the editorial page, India's burden of rising obesity and the hefty costs to pay associated with obesity. Now, in the recent times, in one of the discussions that were conducted, that is Mann Ki Baat, by the Prime Minister nominated 10 eminent people to raise awareness regarding obesity. And in the last one and a half week, there has been a lot of discussion regarding the problem with obesity in India, what is the economic impact of obesity, and what should be done in the coming days in order to address obesity. And I know for a fact that earlier also, Chetan sir has conducted a discussion regarding obesity. So I'll focus on two very important areas that are discussed in the article here. One, how do you define obesity? Suddenly UPSC can ask you the definition of obesity. Please be very careful. Second important area, what is the problem if there is high obesity in India? And the third one, what should be your recommendations? How do you address the problem of rising number of obese people in India? These are the three very important areas that I'll be focusing upon in the discussion here. Now, let me start with the definition of obesity. The definition of obesity. There are two definitions, one given by World Health Organization, WHO, and the second one that India follows. There is a term called as Body Mass Index. Please remember this. BMI, Body Mass Index. What is the essential meaning of a body mass index? You take the weight of a person and you divide it by the square of the height of the person. Simple. You take the weight of the person and you divide it by the square of height of the person. That will give you the body mass index. And whether you are underweight or your appropriate weight, or you are obese or high weight, etc., that is defined based on the body mass index. According to WHO, if the BMI of a person is above 25, then it is considered to be overweight. The person is considered to be overweight. And if it is above 30, then the concerned person is classified as obese. More than 30, obese. Now, in case of India, slight difference in the definition. In case of India, if the person has a BMI between 23 and 25, above 23 and below 25, then the person is considered as overweight. And above 25, it is considered to be obese, and above 35, the person is considered to be morbidly obese. And as the BMI keeps on increasing, and if you're wondering, sir, what is the impact of rising BMI? Essentially, the World Health Organization says if the BMI is higher, it simply shows that lot of the fat content is present in the body. Fat availability or the fat content in the body is very, very high. And that is basically the indicator of higher BMI or a body mass index. Now, why there is a higher BMI generally in the context of India? A lot of people are said to be obese and morbidly obese in India. Why? What is the reason? Multiple reasons. One of the prominent reason is the sedentary lifestyle. The sedentary lifestyle, that is the kind of lifestyle we have adopted over a period of time, it has actually led to people consuming more of a food and having lesser and lesser physical activities to do. For example, a software engineer will go to the office, right, sit on the chair and will keep on working on the laptop. In between, they will have, let's say, 2 cups of coffee or 3 cups of coffee or chai along with sutta. And they will also keep on eating snacks from the bar, biscuits from the bar, chocolates from, right, let's say the company kept place as such. In addition to all of this, they will keep on eating food, etc., etc. But along with all of this, the kind of physical activity that they're involved in, it is much, much lower. Right, compared to what they're consuming, their physical activity which will burn calories, it is lower. As a result of all of this, it will lead to fat deposition in the body. Especially the abdominal fat deposition is higher, and that is essentially going to lead to obesity, and that will have an impact. The sedentary lifestyle is the one. Second one, the appropriate planning, especially in urban centers, is not observed. What do you mean by appropriate planning? You need to have, let's say, parks where people can go either in the morning or evening and conduct certain physical exercise there, or separate cycling lanes should be present in the cities, which will help people cycle to work and back to home, etc., which will increase the physical activity of the people. That is a second problem. And the third problem associated with rising obesity numbers in India is said to be the kind of food that we are consuming. The kind of foods that we are consuming. What is the kind of food that I'm mentioning here? The kind of food which has a high oil content, higher, right, let's say fatty acids content, or the kind of, let's say, highly processed, ultra processed foods. And when people will keep on consuming these kind of, let's say, foods with, right, let's say, not accompanied physical activity or low accompanied physical activity, this will lead to gainage of weight. This will add to obesity problem. So these are the reasons why there is a rising obesity problem in India. Now, if there is a rising obesity problem, what is the impact of that? Is there any impact of, right, let's say, rising number of people who are obese in India? Of course, yes. It will not only have an impact on the economic activity, it will also have an impact on the stability of a household. For example, last week there was an article in Economic Times which stated that with rising size of the waist size, with increasing waist size in India, the Indian economy will start shrinking. I'll repeat the statement. With increasing waist size in India, the economy will start shrinking. How so? If the people are obese, their activity or productivity would be affected. Correct? All of you will agree with me? Please do let me know in the chat section. So if the people are obese, the productivity would be affected. Everybody is okay with this point, right? So this will have an impact on economic activity. the rising healthcare cost will also essentially add to the financial stability of the household. In lot of these cases, lot of these households in India, be it in urban or rural, there are one or two people who are taking care of the work or who are working and taking care of, let's say, the whole family. So all of these will add to the economic activity of the Indian economy. And if you're wondering, sir, what is the impact of this in terms of numbers? Do let me know in terms of numbers so that I can write it in the mains examination. The impact is said to be around 1% of GDP. Impact as of now is said to be around 1% of GDP. And in the next couple of years, it is expected to increase to 1.5% of GDP as well. So the impact will be much, much greater on the overall economy as well. So that is the reason the Prime Minister very recently in the Mann Ki Baat program highlighted the issue of rising obesity, and this has kick-started the talk regarding the obesity problem and what kind of impact it will have on the Indian economy. Now, what is the way forward then? We have understood how do you define obese. You have understood what is the impact of higher number of obese people in India. And by the way, I hope all of you know this. Earlier also we have discussed this. With rising obesity problem, there will also be other related ailments as well, other related diseases as well. So I hope you understand all these points are there. Now the question is, what is the solution then? What should be the solution? In this article, 10 points have been recommended as a way forward. In this article in Hindu newspaper today, 10 points as a way forward has been recommended, and I've listed all these particular 10 points. Let's go one by one. First one, start a dialogue regarding this particular issue in the public domain. Any problem can be solved if you accept that there is a problem. The first point of solution is accepting that there is a problem. So we need to start a dialogue associated with obesity, rise in obesity numbers in India. Start a dialogue related to this, not within the government, among the people, between the people. Let this become a social debate over a period of time. So first one, and this to a very great extent has been kick-started by the Prime Minister in the Mann Ki Baat. Second one, promote regular physical activity. How it can be done? The government of India is implementing multiple projects in the cities. You have smart cities mission. You have urban development initiatives, etc. So why not, when you implement these kind of initiatives, why not ensure that there is certain physical space that is reserved for conducting the day-to-day regular physical activities for a common man? That is essentially, let's say, parks that can be set up, walking parks or jogging parks, or let's say separate cycling lanes, etc. And that will require proper urban development. Right? That is the point number 2. Point number 3, higher taxation on certain types of foods and subsidies on certain other types of foods. Those kind of foods which are unhealthy, for example, those foods which will have high salt, sodium and fat, have higher taxes on this. Those foods which are ultra processed have higher taxes on this. In fact, the economic survey as well, remember this, the economic survey which was published or which was released by the government very recently, this also has mentioned or recommended the same. Have higher taxes on such kind of products and reduce the prices of other kind of products which are healthy for consumption. Because it has been seen that the products which are not, the foods which are not healthy are cheaper in the market. The foods which are, right, let's say healthy for food, healthy for a common person, the prices, the market prices of these commodities or food products are very, very high. For example, today go to the market and try to purchase a burger. You will realize the price is comparatively cheaper when you look at, let's say, a kg of millet or kg of, let's say, healthy products in the market. So argument is simple here. There are certain commodities which do not contribute to improvement in the health, tax them more. And there are certain commodities, certain foods which are required for healthy lifestyle, subsidize them, reduce their market price so that the consumption increases. Done? Third point. Fourth point, whenever people will go to, let's say, healthcare centers, hospitals or secondary healthcare centers or primary healthcare centers, have a compulsory tracking of BMI. Whenever you go to doctors for a checkup, right, for any kind of a checkup, have a tracking of BMI. Let the doctor hold consultations with the patients and basically explain to them what is BMI, what is the impact of a higher BMI, what kind of a impact can the person, right, let's say, feel over a period of time, etc. Point number 5, guidelines for anti-obesity medicines. There are multiple types of anti-obesity medicines which are there in the market where the regulation is very less, where there is no standard procedure or guidelines which has been set up by Government of India. For example, in the newspapers or even in the, let's say, YouTube shorts or in Instagrams, you must have seen multiple celebrities. There is a talk that they are taking, right, let's say, anti-obesity medicines. For example, very recently the same was attributed to, right, let's say, Mr. Karan Johar, where it is said that he is basically using anti-obesity medicines to bring down and control the weight. But the question arises, is there any standard operating procedure or a guideline which has been set up by Government of India regarding usage of such medicines? What if these medicines, fake medicines, will start getting circulated in the economy? What if people will be fooled, people will be affected by using of these kind of medicines, etc.? So that is one more very important point. Sixth point, focus on weight management at offices as well. A lot of times we keep on spending a substantial amount of work that we do, the amount of time that we spend in a day, it is spent in offices. For example, right now, on an average, again I'm going as per the law, on an average we are spending around 48 to 49 hours in offices, right? Whether 6 days or 7 days, don't worry, 48 to 49 hours. And if you go by Niti Aayog recommendation, now they are saying we should work at least 80 to 90 hours. And somebody will say 100 hours you work. And DOJ, the Department of Government Efficiency in USA, will say you have to work 20 hours a week in the offices, etc. So when you are spending so much hours in the offices, so much of time in the offices, there has to be a particular methodology to control your weight there itself. That is, let's say, can we not conduct, let's say, workshops, promotions of healthy eating in the offices itself? Can we not basically promote healthy lifestyle through healthy foods in the offices itself? So promote this kind of a concept at office as well. What about school level? At the primary school itself, focus on the promotion of healthy eating. Right? Have, let's say, certain classes where children, students, young children will be taught what is the use of healthy eating. Point number 8, involvement of multiple ministries. Whenever a policy has to be made by the government, for its effective implementation, we will have to ensure that all the ministries which are required will be present in the policy making as well as implementation. Because please understand, it's a multi-stakeholder approach. You need society to participate. You need the parents to participate. You need the schools to participate. You need the offices to participate. And you need the multiple ministries and departments under the government also to participate. So whenever a policy is made regarding, let's say, promotion of, right, let's say, healthy foods in India, you need agriculture ministry because the production of this has to be promoted. You need a consumer affairs ministry because you need to impose the taxes on sin goods in the market or unhealthy goods in the market, etc. You need finance ministry. So you need to include multiple ministries in the policy formulation and implementation. Collection of data by the scientific community and dissemination for the public usage. For public usage, because a lot of us, those who are reading Hindu newspaper, those who are listening will understand the problem with obesity. But lot of the other people who are not reading for civil services examination, they will not understand what kind of foods to consume, what do you mean by the trans fatty acids, what is the impact of a higher obesity numbers on the Indian economy, etc. They may not understand that. So what we need to do is collect the data and ensure that the data is easily accessible and understandable for the common people. That is the 9th recommendation. And finally, the 10th recommendation, the healthy foods must be made affordable. So these are the 10 recommendations which have been provided in this first article, that is titled India's Burden of Rising Obesity and the Hefty Costs to Pay. Done? Okay. Now associated with this, I've given a question for you to practice a descriptive answer writing. There is a need for a national obesity strategy as the expanding waistline will have an impact on the economy. Discuss the issues involved and recommend a way forward. A 15-marker question you're supposed to write in 250 words. Okay, let me go to the next article. The implication of treating virtual digital assets as the taxable properties. Very recently, the Finance Minister introduced the new Income Tax Bill 2025 on the floor of the Parliament. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of this. The bill has been introduced and this is expected to basically restructure the whole income taxation system in India. Right now, the provisions of Income Tax Act of 1961 are applicable. The Income Tax Act of 1961 are applicable. Now, this particular bill, once it will go through the standing committee and then again discussed in the Parliament, multiple stakeholders are approached or their views are sought, etc. We expect the bill to replace the existing Income Tax Act of 1961. But within this particular proposal, now there is a proposal to have taxation on virtual digital assets, VDA, virtual digital assets. Now please look at the definition of VDA very, very carefully, because until 2022, there was no definition of a virtual digital assets in India. Right? The government did not have a consolidated definition of what is a VDA. But in the Finance Bill 2022, the Government of India introduced an amendment to the IT Act, Income Tax Act of 1961, and as per Section 247, Section 2, subsection 47A of Income Tax Act of 1961. Now, what is a VDA? Any information, code, number or token. Any information, code, number or token not being an Indian currency or foreign currency. Please remember this particular term. Not being a currency. For example, Indian rupee. It's not a virtual digital asset. Now somebody will say, but sir, Indian rupee anyways is in physical form. It is not in virtual form. My dear, have you heard of CBDC? Please do let me know in the chat section. Have you heard of the term CBDC? Central Board Digital Currency. The Central Board Digital Currency is essentially a virtual rupee. It is virtual or digital rupee. So is the term okay with all of you? Right? Please do let me know. Is the term okay? So any information, code, number or token which is not a currency, issued by RBI or other countries, etc., generated through cryptographic means or other means with the promise of being used in transactions or investment. That is essentially called as a virtual digital asset. For example, all of you heard of Bitcoin. Can I simply say Bitcoin primarily fits into the concept of a virtual digital asset? Now, historically, if you see, the usage of Bitcoins or other virtual digital assets in case of India, it was not very high. In other countries, it has essentially grown very fast. The creation of Bitcoins as well as the utilization of Bitcoins in other countries, it has grown very fast. For example, USA. And in other countries, they have implemented laws. For example, in the United States of America, the cryptocurrencies or the virtual digital assets, VDA. VDA is an umbrella term. Crypto is part of a VDA. Is it okay? Right? The crypto is part of VDA. So in case of USA, the VDAs are essentially treated as securities. They are treated as securities and accordingly they are taxed. But in case of India, until 2022, there was a kind of a dilemma. What should be taxation on this? Right? What should be treated, or what is a VDA in the first place? How we should treat it? What kind of tax we should have, etc., etc. But finally, in the Finance Bill 2022, first, the definition was introduced. And second, now the government of India, in order to basically impose a certain taxation, identified multiple types of VDAs and started imposing taxes on it. For example, if you use VDAs, let's say cryptocurrencies, and you buy them and you sell them, you will book certain profits. Government will impose taxes on this. If you transfer VDAs as a gift, if you basically give the VDAs as a gift, again taxes were imposed. If you transfer VDAs from one person to another person, one company to another company, again taxation was imposed. TDS, tax deduction at source, was also imposed on the transfer of VDAs. So different types of taxes or different modes of taxes on different types of transactions were introduced by the government post 2022 in India. And now, with introduction of the Income Tax Bill 2025, how the VDAs would be treated. With the Income Tax Bill of 2025, how the VDAs would be treated, these are certain important points. Again, before I go forward, two things here. One, some of you will be thinking, sir, whenever you write income tax bill, why are you writing I-T like this? Why are you writing I-T? Why don't you simply write IT like this? If I write directly IT bill, that will basically refer to Information Technology Bill. Is it okay? Information Technology Bill. So no, please do not write IT bill in the context of income tax like this. Use a dash between I and T. So point number one. Point number two, I've written multiple sections here. Section 92, Section 393, Section 524. Should you memorize all of these as of now? I would simply say, don't memorize it now. Let the bill be discussed by the standing committee. Let the standing committee give, let's say, any recommendations if they want. Let the government pass this as a bill, make it as an act. Let it be notified, and then and only then the numbers, section numbers for you will become relevant. Okay, now what are the proposals in the Income Tax Bill of 2025 associated with the VDAs? First one, it will explicitly treat VDAs as a property now. Right, not as security but property, right? Properly it will be classified under property. Sir, what do you mean by property? My dear, if you purchase, let's say, a land and you sell it, will it attract a tax? Yes. Will you purchase a share and sell it, will it attract a tax? Of course, yes. So whenever you talk about properties, you are simply referring to assets. And when you purchase the assets and sell the assets in the market, you will book certain profit, then the taxes will become applicable. Whether it is a long-term capital gains tax or short-term, it will depend on the time frame of the asset or the time frame of you owning or holding the asset. So point number one, the VDAs under the Income Tax Bill 2025 now will be categorized under assets. Point number two, imagine a person has a certain VDAs and there is an income tax raid on the house. There is an income tax raid on the house. Along with all the other assets, for example, they will take away all the documents, they will take away the gold, they will take away the cash, etc. Along with all of these assets now, the government officials will also have the right to take away the virtual digital assets. Is the point number two clear to you? They will basically confiscate even the VDAs. Point number two. Point number three, whenever you file the income taxes, you'll have to disclose all of your assets. You'll have to disclose, right, all of your assets. And if you do not disclose the assets, it will be treated as undisclosed assets. And based on the type of the asset, different rates of penalty rates are applicable. Even the VDA will be classified as undisclosed asset if you do not declare it under your income tax returns. Point number three. Point number four, right? Have a look at this. whenever you transfer or sell these particular assets, you will have certain, right, let's say profits. On these particular profits, 30% tax has been proposed in the bill. As such, right now, I repeat, as of right now, it is 30%. Same thing has been proposed in the income tax bill 2025. Whenever, right, let's say beyond certain threshold, you basically transfer these VDAs. 1% TDS, tax deduction at source, is applicable. What is this TDS? Imagine you sell certain assets, you are supposed to receive certain amount of money. The one who is supposed to transfer money to you, they will withhold 1% of the value, give it to government. That is called as TDS. 1% TDS is applicable. When you acquire certain assets, let's say land or machinery, etc., under the Income Tax Act, you can claim certain deductions. In case of the VDAs, no deductions will be allowed. Right? I'll repeat this. Whenever you claim a machine, for example, imagine you own a company and you purchase a machine. Machine is an asset. When you file the income taxes, you can claim certain deductions associated with the machine, associated with the land, etc. But in case of VDAs, even now you cannot claim any deduction, and under the proposal of IT Bill 2025, no deductions can be claimed by you. In addition to this, entity which is dealing with the crypto assets, entity that is dealing with these kind of assets, whenever they will facilitate the sale, purchase, transfers, etc., they will have to provide all the complete details to the government. They will have to provide all the details to the government. So these are some of the very important proposals. I repeat, proposals which have been given under the Income Tax Bill 2025, and most of them right now are applicable. Most of them right now are applicable to VDAs. They have carried forward these kind of concepts or proposals in the IT Bill 2025. Done? Okay. So before I go forward, there is one concern. Remember this. Most of the times, whenever you talk about virtual digital assets, for example, let's say cryptocurrencies, the talk is always surrounding how do we impose a tax on it. I hope you understand. Even when you hear an expert talking about, let's say, cryptocurrencies, the talk is always, it can be used for terrorism purposes. It can be used for, right, let's say, circulation of black money. We need to keep a track of all the transactions. Hence, we need to impose the taxes so that we will know what kind of transactions are happening, what is the value, who is purchasing, etc., etc. But one concern that you need to remember and write it in the mains examination, if at all a question is asked regarding this, is the fact that we need to have a overarching umbrella regulations. Overarching regulations for VDAs in India. Sir, what do you mean by umbrella or overarching regulations? You want to purchase a share. Let me ask you a very simple question. Is there a market for you to purchase a share? Yes. Is there a market where you have to sell the shares? Is there a market for this? Yes. If something happens to your payment, is there a regulatory mechanism to file a complaint? Is there, right, a regulatory mechanism to ensure that all the stakeholders are following the guidelines associated with the stock market? Answer to all the questions that I've asked you just now is yes. Right? Answer is yes. But in case of cryptocurrencies, in case of, let's say, virtual digital assets, don't you think there are certain loopholes or, let's say, lack of regulations? There are certain gaps in regulations. For example, imagine there is a certain fraud that has happened in case of cryptocurrencies. Any clarity, which is the authority which will handle this issue? If there is a certain issue regarding, let's say, crypto platform, any guarantee which authority will handle this particular issue? If a consumer or a customer has a grievance, any clarity to which authority the customer can go and file a complaint? So the argument is very simple here. There is a need for regulation, no doubt. There is a need to impose taxes. There is no doubt regarding that as well. But more importantly, if you want to basically promote the market of virtual digital assets in India, you need to have a complete set of regulations or umbrella regulations to regulate and promote VDA market in India. Because whether RBI likes it or not, whether SEBI likes it or not, whether Government of India likes it or not, there are investors who are interested in cryptocurrencies in India. There are investors, and the investment in cryptocurrencies has been increasing in India. You must have seen your friends only talking about cryptocurrencies, where they'll keep on telling them, I invested this much, the value has gone up to this much, etc., etc. So there is a need for overarching a cohesive approach of regulation. So regarding that only, I've given a question for you to practice. To promote and regulate virtual digital assets market in India, there is a need for a cohesive approach. Elaborate 15 marker question, 250 words. Okay, so I've given an MCQ here. Please have a look at the MCQ. If you do not know the answer, don't panic. I will give you the answer at the end of the session. Consider the following statements regarding VDAs. Right, 4 statements are there. I've increased the difficulty level now. UPSC was giving 3, I've given 4. 1% TDS is applicable for all the transfers of VDAs. VDAs are defined under Section 2, subsection 47A of Income Tax Act of 1961. Those who are appearing for prelims, here is a hint for you. Focus on these kind of numbers, that is section numbers. I'll give a very simple example. Last year, in the budget that was presented in the month of July 2020, right, let's say 2024, the Government of India abolished angel tax. What was the section under the Income Tax Act of 1961 under which angel tax was applicable earlier? These are the kind of questions which UPSC will ask you in the preliminary examination. So be very, very careful regarding the section numbers. If VDAs are gifted, then they do not attract any tax. If the VDAs are included or including the CBDC is issued by RBI. How many of the statements are true? Do let me know. If not, wait, I'll give you the answer at the end of the session. Next, third article, Australia, the partner for India's growth trajectory. The writer, Mr. Philip Green, is Australia's High Commissioner to India. Essentially, what is given in the article is how India and Australia can help each other, and what is the importance of the relations that are existing between India and Australia. Now, let me give you the explanation here. Please understand, back in the year 2022, India as well as Australia signed a trade agreement, Economic Comprehensive Trade Agreement, ECTA. Under the ECTA, a type of a free trade agreement which will cover not just the trade but many other aspects as well. The Government of India as well as Australia signed it, and as a result of this, the amount of a trade that is happening between India and Australia has increased. According to the author, or let's say the writer here, the overall exports from India to rest of the world in the last 5 years has increased by 35%. The exports have increased by 35%. But the exports from India to Australia in the last 5 years, the exports have jumped up by 66%. By 66%. Overall exports 35, from India to Australia 66%, which essentially shows the fact that India and Australia have got good trade relations, and there is a huge potential that India can leverage by promoting exports to Australia. Now, this agreement which has been signed in 2022 will play a very important role in promoting trade, bilateral trade. By the way, this is a bilateral trade agreement. India and Australia have signed a bilateral trade agreement in promoting more and more trade between India and Australia. Point number 1. Point number 2, there is a kind of complementarity that is existing between India and Australia. That is, India needs to grow fast. For this, it will require certain imports. Australia can supply it. Australia can easily supply it. On the other side, Australia requires a lot of labor. Australia requires certain countries where they can invest money. Australia requires certain countries where they can export their agriculture commodities. That is where India will come into picture. That is where India exactly will come into picture. For example, one of the four pillars that has been talked about in this article is essentially agribusiness. The other three are, I'll just write this. One is agribusiness. The second one is education and skills. Education and skills. The third one is clean energy. And the fourth one is tourism. The fourth one is tourism. And why these particular four pillars or four highways have been mentioned? Very recently, the Prime Minister of Australia has proposed a document or a strategy document where there is a need or there is a discussion strategy which has been recommended to promote all of these between India and Australia till 2035. Till 2035, what they are supposed to do, what are the areas of focus, strategy areas, etc. All of that has been discussed. For example, in case of agribusiness, India imports pulses from Australia. There is a market that is existing for Australian exports. For example, education and skill sets. Australian universities, one has already been set up in India. The first, let's say foreign university has set up campus in India, that is in the Gift City, and that is from Australia. And many more campuses are yet to be set up or will be set up in the coming days in India, and these are from Australia. That is in the context of education as well as the skill sets. The third one is clean energy. Australia is basically producing a lot of these critical minerals, and India requires these critical minerals, for example, let's say in producing electric vehicles. These critical minerals, as such, there is already a partnership agreement that is existing between India and Australia, essentially to supply these critical minerals that will help India produce more or get access to these critical minerals, which will help in production. And finally, tourism. There is a very close linkage in terms of tourism between India and Australia, because a lot of Indians travel to Australia. They want to harness this potential and ensure that millions and billions of dollars they'll be able to generate in terms of, let's say, tourism activities. So these are the four very important strategic, or let's say the pillars or the highways that have been identified by the government of Australia to foster cooperation between India and the country Australia. Done? So these are certain important points mentioned in the article here. Now let me go to the next article. The way to protect Orans. Orans are nothing but sacred places or sacred groves. Now what is the discussion here? Last year, in the year 2024, in one of the judgments, the Supreme Court of India, in December 2024, in T.N. Godavarman, Tirumalapad versus Union of India, in this particular case, has issued an order, has issued a judgment. And this judgment essentially focuses on promotion and protection. That is the promotion of, let's say the people, or let's say the residing population in the surrounding of these particular, let's say sacred forest or sacred groves, and protection of these sacred groves, and community participation in, let's say, promotion and protection of the sacred groves. Certain orders have been issued in the judgment. These orders, I'll just give you some of these just to make you understand. These orders, no doubt, were needed because across India, multiple states have presence of sacred groves or sacred forest. But in multiple places, there is no uniformity in terms of, let's say, protecting these particular sacred groves. So from one state to another state, the implementation would differ. The participation of the communities would differ, etc., etc. So the Supreme Court of India essentially has issued an order where it has suggested that the government should bring these particular sacred groves under forest laws. The forest laws must be used, or the provisions under that must be used to identify these sacred groves or sacred forests and provide protection and promote community participation within these particular sacred groves. And please understand, these sacred forest or sacred groves are essentially forest only. These are places, certain places in certain regions where there is a certain association with mythology. There is association with certain deity. And because of this kind of importance, usually human interference, the community that is residing in this region doesn't allow for the human interference or human activities in these forests. Very little or very few types of activities are allowed to be conducted in these particular areas. For example, generally in many of these sacred regions, the only people who are allowed to enter and pick out something is, let's say the practitioners of medicines. They are allowed to basically collect certain herbs which are used for treatment purposes. So now Supreme Court of India has essentially stated that, one, move towards a formalization, identification of these sacred groves and declare these Orans. Orans is a name for sacred forest in Rajasthan. From one state to another state, different names are there, and within one state, multiple names can be used varying from one area to another area. So the Orans should be declared as a forest under the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. Right? This is a recommendation, this is a judgment which has been issued by Supreme Court of India. But the writer here simply says, no doubt the sacred forest required protection. No doubt the sacred forest require higher participation and decision making of the community which is protecting and, let's say, promoting the growth of the sacred forest. But the writer raises certain questions or concerns regarding the Supreme Court judgment and its impact. For example, once this is declared as a forest, let's say a sacred forest is declared as a forest under the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, then the right to denotify this particular land will go to the central government. Any part of this land has to be denotified. It has to be done only by the central government. And central government, without taking into consideration the importance or the feelings or let's say the emotional touch that the community has with this sacred groves, can declare part of it as denotified land, can give it for usage by other companies, etc. That can happen, which will basically defeat the whole purpose of what is the Supreme Court of India trying to do. And second, even in certain cases, the denotification need not be done, or let's say the exemptions have been provided. There are exceptions in multiple cases. For example, can you use a certain part of this to develop a zoo? Can you use a certain part of this to develop, let's say, a tourism project, etc. So, a lot of concerns have been raised if it will be declared a forest under the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. Point number 2, declare these as community reserves under Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Done. You will declare this as a community reserve and certain protection will be provided. There will be a community or there will be a board that will be set up. The board will have representation of members from the community as well. But please understand, the board that shall be set up to manage this particular Oran now, they will just have recommendation powers itself. They will simply have recommendatory powers or advisory powers. They will give recommendations. Ultimately, the power will rest with the state government, not with this particular board that has been set up to protect and promote this particular Oran. So again, this will defeat the whole purpose of community participation because they are not the decision makers. They are not the decision makers. They are simply advisory bodies. Third one, there is a suggestion to declare Orans as common forest land under the Forest Right Act of 2006. If you declare this as a common forest land, what will be the impact of it? anybody who wants to get access to this particular land or this forest will have to be eligible. I'll repeat the statement. Anybody who wants to enter this region, they will have to be eligible. And to meet the eligibility criteria, it is a lot of times difficult. Many of the times, non-governmental organizations and multiple types of other non-formal institutions have been set up historically to protect the sacred groves. They may not be able to meet the conditions or the eligibility criteria that are defined to get access to these forests. That will again basically bar community development. It will prohibit community development, not promote community development. So these are certain concerns which have been raised by the writer here regarding the Supreme Court judgment to protect, promote the Orans or sacred groves across the whole of India. Okay, now next article, the editorial page, battle for growth. Right, simple points here. Very recently, the GDP growth rate for the third quarter was announced. For the third quarter, the GDP growth rate was announced. I don't know how many of you have read that particular newspaper article, but can anybody tell me how many times a revision will be conducted for a GDP number to arrive at a final number for a particular year? I'll repeat the question again. Let me see, because this has been changed very recently by MOSPI. I'll repeat the question here. How many revisions will be conducted to arrive at a final number for a GDP or a GDP for a particular financial year? What is the right answer? Please do let me know in the chat section, and those who are watching later in the comment section. This is important. Why? Very recently it has been changed. Very recently it has been changed. Okay, let me go forward. Let me talk about what are the important points mentioned in the article. The points are very simple. The third quarter GDP growth rate is 6.2%. The third quarter GDP growth rate is 6.2%. Much better compared to what it was in the second quarter, which was around 5.6%. Better than what it was in the second quarter, but please understand, if you take from the fourth quarter of financial year 23, almost 2 years, I'm saying almost, not completely, almost 2 years. If you take almost 2 years, this GDP growth rate will be one of the lowest. This will be one of the lowest GDP growth rates. In fact, the editorial says, if you ignore the second quarter GDP growth rate, if you basically exempt the second quarter GDP growth rate, this will be the lowest in last almost 2 years. Right? This will be the lowest in the last almost 2 years. Right? This is point number one. Point number two, who has contributed to the growth? Which segment has contributed to the growth? Primary, secondary, and tertiary. If you look at the growth rates, you will realize that the primary sector growth rate or the contribution to the growth rate has increased. Whereas the secondary and tertiary, they have been affected, their contribution is lower. Having said so, please understand, the chief economic advisor says that we will be able to achieve good growth rate in the fourth quarter, and as a result of that, we will be able to achieve, right, a targeted growth rate for the current financial year. But the experts are skeptical. Many of the experts are skeptical whether we will be able to achieve the targeted growth rate for the current financial year. Reason being, the volatility is in the international market. The volatility is in the international market. Uncertainty is in the international market. For example, any guarantee what will be the reciprocal tariff that will be announced by Mr. Donald Trump on Indian exports? There is no clarity as of now. And when there is no clarity, it will create uncertainty. I hope you understand. When there is no clarity, it will create uncertainty. Uncertainty is never good for economy. It is never good for a market. For example, one of the areas that is expected to be targeted, I'll repeat the statement. That is the one area that is expected to be targeted is essentially pharmaceutical exports. The pharma exports from India. The generic drugs that we export. And please understand, around a third of total pharma exports from India go to USA. And the market or this particular pharmaceutical industry already is worried as to what kind of tariffs will be imposed on them, because they are one of the largest markets or export destination for pharmaceutical industry. Right, so you will only come to know what is the, right, let's say the fourth quarter GDP growth rate once the April data, or let's say once the April that is next financial year will start, and in the month of May you will come across the data for the fourth quarter of the current financial year. So these are certain important points which have been mentioned. In addition to this, the article also says a moderate inflation rate. Inflation rate has moderated. That is going to basically promote better investment, attract investments, better consumption, better growth in the Indian economy. Done. So these are certain important points mentioned in the article here. Now, let's look at certain articles which are relevant for preliminary examination. One is India launches multi-nation alliance for collaboration on sustainable development. Sustainable development. Now, what is this idea? Please understand, there is a term called as circular economy. One is called as a linear economy and the other one is called as circular economy. What is the idea of a linear and a circular? If you simply purchase something, use it and throw it, that is essentially called as a linear economy. But if you purchase something and production of this is ecologically friendly, you will use it, reuse it and recycle it. This is called as circular economy. This is essentially called as circular economy. So government of India along with many countries around the world have been promoting the concept of a circular economy. In fact, there is a concept called as a 3R, Regional 3R Circular Economy Forum. What is this 3R? 3R essentially stands for reduce, reuse and recycle. Reduce, reuse and recycle. That is, a forum has been set up by United Nations back in the year 2009. And periodically, these countries from Asian part of the globe, they will keep on meeting and they will keep on holding consultations and coming out with certain policy recommendations. The 12th one, right, understand this, the 12th Regional 3R and Circular Economy Forum is being conducted in India. It is being conducted in India and this is being conducted at Jaipur now. Please understand, it is a multi-day convention. It is being conducted at Jaipur. And suddenly, right, imagine you're sitting in the interview. And when I say interview, right, some of you will start, right, getting worried now. If they ask you why specifically the city of Jaipur, any particular reason why it was held at Jaipur, the government says Jaipur is a prime location of the concept of a 3R because of multiple projects which have been implemented. For example, rainwater harvesting project. Right? I hope you understand. Rainwater harvesting project, etc. So that is the reason this is being conducted at Jaipur. Now, Government of India has proposed, right, a C3 coalition. Right? Government of India has proposed, again please understand, it has proposed C3 coalition. What is a C3? It simply stands for Cities Coalition for Circularity. Cities Coalition for Circularity. It essentially means now cities across multiple countries, will basically be in contact with each other. Contact here simply means cities will basically contribute to each other's growth of circular economy. What has been adopted, what has worked out in one city now can be implemented with assistance from this city in another city across another country. So city to city, now there will be coalition, there will be coordination. Projects can be promoted, private sector participation can be promoted, etc. So this is just a proposal as of now. It is just a proposal. What should be the operating procedure? What should be the points in this, etc. The Government of India says it will be decided going forward, but just a coalition has been proposed as of now. Done? Right? So C3 has been proposed and launched by Government of India. in the meeting of regional 3R. Now next one, Gangetic Dolphins, the first ever consolidated survey. I hope you understand that first ever consolidated survey which will be used as a base going forward. This is important. Which will be used as a base going forward. This is the survey which has been conducted from 2021 to 2023. Please understand, the government of India back in the year 2020 launched Project Dolphin. They launched Project Dolphin, and under this particular Project Dolphin from 21 to 23, multiple places along multiple rivers and tributaries of the main rivers, surveys have been conducted, studies have been conducted by multiple groups, and according to this group now, there are 6,327 Gangetic dolphins across 4 states. Please make a note of all of these particular points. Question can be asked in the preliminary examination. Questions can be asked in the preliminary examination. Okay. So 6,324 in Ganges River. These are Ganges River dolphins. 3 are Indus River dolphins. 3,275 are in the mainstream of Ganga. 2,414 in Ganga tributaries. 584 in Brahmaputra. Similar question or question on this line itself can be asked. Where are the river dolphins found in India? I am saying river dolphins, be very careful, because the dolphins can be found in sea also, surrounding India, in lakes also, in river also. Right? So, highest number of dolphins in India, the state which has the highest number of dolphins is Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh. Following Uttar Pradesh, it is Bihar. It is the state of Bihar which has the second highest number of dolphins. Now, why this data is important? Point number 1, presence of dolphins is generally equated with cleanliness in a river. I'll repeat the statement. If the dolphins are present in a river, generally it is associated with the cleanliness of the water in the river. Because these river dolphins require clean water to be present and thrive in these particular rivers. So that is one reason. Second, as of now, multiple methods were used to identify how many number of dolphins are there in India. But please understand, there was no scientific method which was followed. All the methods were different. The government of India simply says this will be the most comprehensive and the consolidated method, and the number that we derive, this will be used as the standard now to compare. What do you mean by compare? For example, let's say after some days you will come across the number of tigers in India. Will you not see, they will talk about whether the tiger population has increased or decreased compared to previous reference period. But you will not see that particular kind of a data in the census, or let's say in the numbers that is given in the article. Why? Reason cited by the experts is, until now there was no uniform method. And please understand, identification. Right? Identification of dolphins, the number of dolphins is very, very cumbersome, very, very difficult process. Unlike, let's say, counting the number of tigers, where looking at the patches on the skin of tiger, the pattern of these patches, you can identify, you can differentiate between one tiger to another tiger. In case of elephants, they look at the ear, size of the ears, etc. to differentiate and ensure there is no duplication. But the dolphins are generally present in the river, and these come to the surface of the river very few times just to ensure that they have sufficient air. So in such cases, very difficult to count the number of dolphins, right? And because these are affected, the population has been affected because of multiple human activities, etc. Government of India now says there are total 6,327 Gangetic dolphins. Done. So remember the number. Remember, these are present in these rivers, and the maximum number of the river dolphins are present in Ganga mainstream. That can also be asked. And these are present maximum in the state of UP. That can also be asked. And these are endangered species as well. Okay. So MCQ number 74. The Project Dolphin has been launched in 2020. The Ministry of Water Resources is the nodal ministry. Dolphins are present only in the Himalayan rivers in India. How many of the statements are true? I will give you the key answer after some time. Almost a couple of small articles are left out, almost at the end now. National Board of Wildlife. Right, the 7th meeting, right, please make a note of this. The 7th meeting of National Board of Wildlife was conducted. The chairperson of National Board of Wildlife is the Prime Minister. Remember this also. The chairperson is the Prime Minister. Right, the National Board for Wildlife was set up back in the year 2003. Before 2003, it was called as the Indian Board for Wildlife. IBW, Indian Board for Wildlife. In the year 2002, Wildlife Protection Act was amended. As a result of this, NBWL was established. So far, including the yesterday's one, 7 meetings have taken place, and essentially the National Board for Wildlife is a statutory body which will give multiple recommendations, or let's say will give approvals to the multiple projects in the wildlife region, etc., etc. Done. So this question can be asked. 7th meeting, Prime Minister is the chairperson, statutory body, right, and it has basically replaced IBW, right. These are the factual points. Next article, direct payout scheme mechanism. Very small article, although this is very important for preliminary examination. Very small article has been mentioned in the business page in the left side corner. MII implement a direct payout scheme mechanism. What is this, right? MII in the first place, and what is this direct payout scheme mechanism? Very simple, listen to me carefully. And as such, earlier a preliminary question has been asked on the concept of MII. What is MII? MII stands for Market Infrastructure Institutions. Market Infrastructure Institutions. These are essentially those institutions present in the financial market which will ensure the market will function. To ensure that the market will function, there are multiple institutions that are required. For example, there is right, let's say NSE, there is a BSE, there is clearing corporation, etc. There are multiple institutions which will participate and ensure the financial market will operate and function. These are called as market infrastructure institutions. Now, what is the directive of SEBI? SEBI has directed that these institutions must implement a direct payout scheme. The direct payout scheme essentially means the following. Earlier, understand this carefully, earlier, imagine I will purchase a share. I am the investor. I will pay money to you. You are the holder of the share and you will transfer the share to me. But please understand, the shares were not directly transferred into my demat account. Rather, they would go into the demat account of the intermediary, let's say a stockbroker. They would go into the account of the intermediary, and this intermediary would transfer the share into my account. Is everybody okay with the process here? Is everybody okay with the process? This used to happen earlier. This used to happen earlier. What SEBI says is, this method is not transparent enough. This method, there is a scope of misuse. There's a scope of, right, let's say deviations, etc. What do you mean by this? This intermediary, let's say a stockbroker, they will also have their own securities. Now, what is the guarantee that the securities which are supposed to be transferred to me are directly transferred? What if they use it for their own purposes? They will transfer with a delay. They will use it for some other purposes. They will use it to short sell, or let's say conduct certain short transactions or intraday transactions in the market, etc. There is a huge scope. So what did SEBI simply say? Let's do one thing. Let's eliminate the requirement to transfer the shares to the intermediary. Simple. Let's eliminate the need to transfer the shares to the intermediary. Rather, what we will do is, whenever the shares have to be transferred, let's say I will pay money to you, your shares will be directly transferred into my demat account now. Please look at the name, you will understand. Look at the name of the mechanism now. Direct payout scheme mechanism. That is, the instruments or securities, rather than going to the intermediary and coming to me later, now it will directly come into my demat account. What is the benefit? What is the advantage? The shares, or let's say the securities, will directly be accredited into my demat account. There is a much better transparent mechanism now. The time taken for me to receive the shares will be cut down. The scope of a misuse will also be cut down. Done? So these are certain important points associated with this mechanism. Last two articles, just factual information here. Supreme Court to examine plea against rules on blocking online content. Yesterday also there was an article associated with this. Today there is an article which says the Supreme Court of India has accepted the petition now. They will see what is the power that is there with the central government to block online content. Essentially understand this. The petitioners have raised concerns regarding the powers that are there with the government, that is the Department of Telecommunications, under the Information Technology Rules of 2009. Information Technology Rules 2009. Under this, specifically the sections that have been, or the rules that have been pointed out are Rules 8 and 9. Rules 8 and 9 and Rule 16. Rules 8 and 9 and rule number 16. What does the Rule 8 and 9 basically provide for? Under Rule 8 and 9, I hope you remember this. Yesterday we were discussing in the context of a Tamil online newspaper. The central government, that is a Department of Telecommunication, will send a notice and basically ask the service provider to take down or block certain content which is present online. But what is the contention here? The contention is very simple. One, when the notice is sent, there is no compulsion on the Department of Telecommunications to send the notice to the one who has published the content. There is no compulsion. They can simply send it to the service provider, that is the internet service provider, ask the internet service provider to block the page. Whereas the one who has published the content, let's say I have published the content, there is no compulsion on the government to send a notice and ask for clarification from me, even before blocking the content. This happens because of the wordings that are used in rules, and that is what the contention is. They are simply saying it should not be, there is a statement which says either the service provider or the publisher. I hope you understand the statement here. Either the internet service provider or the publisher. That is, if I publish the content, the notice shall be sent to me, or let's say Airtel company, or let's say the Reliance company, etc., to take down the content. What government generally does is they will send it to the service provider, and service provider, because the order has come from the government, they will simply take down the content. There is no compulsion on the government to send the notice to me as well before ordering the takedown. So the petitioners are asking this kind of a language should not be allowed. This kind of language should not be allowed in the law, So because the government will send it to the companies will follow the government rule. But the one who has published the content is left out of the loop. That is the first contention. Second contention is essentially regarding Rule 16, which says there is no need to clear, or there is no need to make it public regarding what or under what provision, for what purpose the takedown order has been issued. On what basis the takedown order has been issued? It shall not be revealed. It shall be kept confidential. Basically, the petitioners are saying it is against the freedom of expression, freedom of press, etc. So this rule should be, rule number 16 should be declared unconstitutional and must be struck down. Supreme Court of India has accepted the petition. Now the hearing will start. Done? So this is an update regarding what we have discussed earlier. Next one more update regarding the Supreme Court order let's say associated with the online content in India. Supreme Court of India has sought the directions, or let's say has sought the views of Government of India regarding any policy that can be implemented to curb, to basically contain the online vulgarity. Right? As expected, what was feared, that is going to happen now. That is essentially the Government of India will bring up the digital bill that was earlier shelved by Government of India, expected to happen. Under the earlier bill, which was shelved or which was basically withdrawn by Government of India, there were a lot of regulations, overarching powers that the Government of India had regarding the digital media. So again, I'm not saying Government of India will do this. I'm simply saying now Supreme Court of India has asked the viewpoint of Government of India, what should be done. But again, to be very precise here, Supreme Court of India has said, we want to regulate, we want to ensure this kind of online vulgarity will not be promoted. We do not want to censor. We do not want to contain this particular freedom. We want to ensure the let's say the programs that will be uploaded or the videos that are available for everybody to see will basically uphold the family values in India. Right, so essentially that particular viewpoint has been sought by Supreme Court of India from the Government of India now. Right, so again, it is an ongoing process. You will realize or you will understand what will the government come out with the proposal in the coming days. Okay, right, so these are the let's say the 11 articles from today's Hindu newspaper edition. I'm done with the discussion. Let me solve or give you the key answers for the 2 MCQs, then I'll take up your questions which you have uploaded or which you have given in the comment section in the yesterday's video. MCQ number 73. Consider the following statements regarding VDS. 1% TDS is applicable for all the transfers? No, it is not applicable for all the transfers, only when the transfers cross a certain threshold. For example, for individuals, it is 10,000. For let's say the entities, it is 50,000 rupees. So VDAs are defined under section 247A, that is section 2 subsection 47A of Income Tax Act of 1961. Yes, it is true. If VDAs are gifted, then they do not attract any tax. Incorrect. Even if you gift VDAs, it will attract a tax. Okay. Right. So how many of the statements are true? Only one of them is true. That is option A. Question number 74. And again, somebody will say, sir, earlier there were 4 statements. Don't worry, I'll add the 4th statement. What was the 4th statement? The CBDCs. The CBDCs, that is digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, are considered as VDAs under the Act? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. Right. So I hope you understand. If that was true, just imagine if that was true, right? Basically, whenever you purchase something, right, or you hold cash, value will change, etc., government would impose a tax. No. The CBDCs, I've already told you, currencies that are issued by the governments or the central banks are not part of VDAs as of now. Okay. So even the 4th statement is incorrect. Question number 74. Consider the following statements. The project Dolphin has been launched in 2020. Yes. The Ministry of Water Resources is the nodal ministry. No, it is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Ecology. Dolphins are present only in the Himalayan rivers in India. No. Right, sir, how can you say these are not present only in the Himalayan rivers? For example, the survey which has been conducted which says 6,300 odd dolphins are present in India, river dolphins. One of the rivers that they have considered is the river Bias. River Bias. It is not this side of India. It basically flows from other part of India. Right, flows into multiple states and then enters into other country. So 3rd statement is incorrect. Right option is option A, only one. Okay. Right, so some of the questions that were raised by you people in the yesterday's video. All banks are compulsorily supposed to link their deposit rates to external benchmarking? No. Please understand, point number 1, the statement itself is ambiguous. Ambiguous in the sense, are all the banks supposed to connect all the loans to external benchmarking? If that is a statement, absolutely no. Because as of now, the loans that are given to MSMEs, housing sector, these are externally benchmarked. Whereas the loans which are given to corporates, these are under, right, let's say MCLR, marginal cost of funds based lending rate. Here it's 4R, but in paper it is written as 3R. Is it correct or wrong? My dear, please understand. The 3 R's, right, are essentially record, reduce, and redistribute. These are the actual 3 R's. Now somebody will say, right, or put in today's video, but sir, you wrote the term representation as well. Right, whenever United Nations, UN, whenever United Nations will talk about unpaid work like this, they will talk about 5R. That is, in addition to record, reduce and redistribute, they will talk about representation and reward. That is 5R. So if you see, or if you have read the yesterday's newspaper, the 4th R is basically the representation. Except US, all countries are allowed to issue GDR, including India. Many companies in India have issued ADR, GDR. The amount of money collected by Indian companies under ADR, GDR is recorded. I didn't find it anywhere. And the other questions were basically focused on the concept of ADR and GDR. Now, point number 1, the amount of money collected by Indian companies under ADR or GDR, is it recorded? I did not find it anywhere. True. Basically, you must have referred to certain books. Under balance of payments, it is not mentioned. But let me show you the valid data for this, right? The valid source of this. What is a valid source? Can everybody see what is the website name here? I've taken this screenshot from Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. And this page is for balance of payments. Under balance of payments, they are talking about capital account. Capital account will consist of both equity and debt flows. Right, debt and equity flows. And one type of equity flow, the portfolio investment, will consist of amount raised by Indian corporates through global depository receipts or American depository receipts. So there is right, a source within the website of MOSPI. Again, I do understand, right, a lot of you will basically throw up the book like this or throw your hands in the air and exclaim, sir, who will go to MOSPI website and read it? I have read it. I am telling you now. Many of the books have not given it. That doesn't mean it is incorrect. It is correct. Okay. ADR and GDR, simple. Indian company, when they will issue the instruments in the USA market, it is called as ADR. When they issue these instruments in, let's say, other markets, these are called as GDR. Simple concept. Right? Instead of listing your company, instead of directly listing your shares, you will represent or you will list out an instrument which will represent the shares. That is called as ADR in case of America, GDR in case of other, right, let's say, countries. Done. So these are certain things that were, right, raised as a doubts in the context of yesterday's session. Again, just to reiterate, right, in the upcoming Saturday, on the Saturday starting at 2 p.m, there will be a marathon session, complete economy. We will discuss all the topics that are relevant for the preliminary examination, Indian economy. We will discuss this through MCQs. Please do join the session. It will be a marathon session. Be ready, right? I'm planning for a complete, let's say, 7 to 8 hours marathon session. So be ready for that. We will meet on Saturday, 2 p.m. live. Okay. So those who want the PPT, please do join the Telegram channel. It will be uploaded in next couple of minutes. If you like this initiative, do hit the like button. And if you yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Take care. Have a great day.